welcome to a new edition of A Daily Debate. This evening we'll be debating the not-so-diplomatic statements by the U.S. top diplomat, which was met with quite a lot of criticism. And more importantly, what is the world doing to brace itself against a violent wave of terrorism, which is leaving no one unharmed? Yesterday, around 34 people were the victims of a tragic incident which took place in Brussels, and over 200 were injured in that tragic incident. That and much more will be under discussion in this evening's debate. But before we do so, highlighting Egyptian top stories. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi swore in 10 new ministers in a cabinet shake-up earlier in the day, and a new ministry was created. The 10 ministers were pertaining mostly to the economic portfolio, namely the tourism, finance, investment, justice, civil aviation, irrigation, human resources, antiquities, and transportation. Worth noting, a new ministry was formed, which is the Ministry for Public Business Sector. This ministry was actually in effect some years ago, and it was re-established again. The expectations from this reshuffle, to comment on that, we have with us on the phone Engineer Hassan Shaban, who is the former Vice Chairman of Al Wafd Party. Engineer Hassan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
How did this cabinet shake-up meet with your expectations? Is this basically what you expected in terms of a change?
This is a very difficult question, Dina. I know this cabinet shuffle did not really live up to the expectations. And I don't know why did we rush to make this cabinet shuffle before the ministry or the government present their budget to the parliament. I thought it would have been wiser if the government presents the budget and if there is any criticism in the parliament for some of the items in the budget, they go back and revise it, and in light of the notes and the criticism that the parliament will make, the cabinet shuffle should be made according to the situation or the relationship between the parliament and...
There was a lot, Engineer Hassan, there was a lot of criticism, specifically pertaining to the economic portfolio ministers.
Exactly.
This is why the shuffle was taking place, because people were very critical of the quality, performance, and lack of harmony between the economic portfolio ministers.
I think the group that took over today is a freeing or lowering the price of the pound. Nevertheless, I thought the whole group that became in charge of the economical situation today should have been or should have formed a group as advisors to the present minister. And if they did not get along, they then make a change in the economical group only. But the change actually took place in a vast number of ministers, like 10 ministers actually.
10.
And that was a surprise because, yes, we all are suffering from the economical situation, and we would like to find a loophole just to lead us to a good solution and stabilize the relationship between the pound and the dollar. But I don't think that the period between now or tomorrow morning and a week from now, the government will present their program to the parliament.
Yes.
And the parliament will vote again. If the parliament votes against this government, this will be the shortest government in the history of Egypt. So I would have waited till we made the final touches on the budget, presented to the parliament, and in light of the situation after that, I will make the changes required. But definitely there was some weak or very, low performance, low standard performance from some of the ministers, and definitely there would have been a change later on. But the timing of the change should have been only to the economical group. Anyway, I wish this government luck. I hope that they understand that each minister on his own will not really succeed. We need to coordinate between the different ministers. Irrigation, agriculture, they should work together. I think the new irrigation minister is a very knowledgeable person in regard of the crisis with the Ethiopians on the Renaissance Dam.
Yes.
It might have been late and unfair to him to try to find a way out of this problem, but he's a very knowledgeable person, and he's got experience, and I wish everybody luck. We are in a bind, and we need some imagination to find a good solution to the big number of problems that we have. I think the Minister of Tourism was essential to leave, to have some new blood. A Minister of Education as well.
He was not changed. The Minister of Education was not changed.
I thought he actually was one of the...
No, he's not one of the 10 ministers changed.
Anyway, let's hope that this government will survive the voting in the parliament, because this is the real challenge, really. I don't know. The parliament is in a bind because they will vote confidence against a government that did not have a chance to perform yet. The lead time between this cabinet shuffle and the voting on the government is very limited and very short, and this applies a lot of pressure over the parliament. And I don't know, I think Engineer Sharif Ismail deserves a chance to show everybody that this government shuffle could actually do some good to the economy. Let's wait and see. Yes. But I think if I had the choice, I would have waited till I would have presented the budget to the parliament, then made the required changes on the different ministers.
Engineer Hassan Shaban, thank you very much for your input. And the cabinet will actually be presenting its program to Parliament within a few days, as it was stipulated or scheduled. And then we'll see how things will progress on that front. Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State voiced concern about the human rights situation in Egypt. How genuine is that concern, and is it a mere concern really for human rights, or is the issue being politicized? We'll be under discussion in a few moments, so please stay with us.
In a red statement, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry voiced concerns on the alleged deterioration in human rights situation, including the reported decision by the Egyptian government to reopen the investigation of the Egyptian non-governmental organizations documenting human rights abuses and defending the freedoms enshrined in Egypt's constitution. This decision comes against a wider backdrop of arrests and intimidation of political opposition, journalists, civil society activists, and cultural figures, according to Kerry. Kerry also added that these steps run controversy in the universal principle of the freedom of association and to the government of Egypt's commitments to support the role of civil society in the governance and development, stressing that restrictions on the space of civil society activity will produce neither stability nor security. Meanwhile, Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry rejected the criticism of the country's human rights situation by his U.S. counterpart, saying that such matters were the responsibility of the Egyptian government, which was working to implement the constitution. In a press conference with a Slovakian counterpart in Cairo, Shoukry said that Egypt rejects any kind of international guidance on human rights. He said human rights issues are the responsibility of the Egyptian government, which is very keen to implement and put into action a constitution which stipulates respect for and commitment to human rights. He also added that not only is the Egyptian government working on human rights in Egypt, but that such matters are discussed by the public and by NGOs. A judicial committee overseeing a 5-year-old investigation into several rights activists accused of receiving illegal funding from foreign sources ordered on Thursday the freezing of assets of 4 Egyptian human rights activists and their families. They include rights activist Gamal Aid and investigative journalist Hussam Bahgat. Deputy Speaker of Egypt's parliament told reporters on Saturday that the statement issued by the U.S. Secretary of State on human rights in Egypt represented another American intervention in Egypt's internal affairs. On another front, Egypt's parliament also authorized an 8-member delegation to visit Brussels next month to respond to the European Parliament's recent resolution which condemned alleged human rights violations in Egypt. The non-binding resolution issued on March 10th criticized what it described as a deterioration of human rights in Egypt in context of the death of Italian student Giulio Regini, whose body was found on the 3rd of February bearing marks of torture. Egypt's House of Representatives was quick to condemn the resolution, describing it as a politicized, groundless, and showing a lack of respect for the country's sovereignty.